Hello friends, I'm Mark Moore. I'm the author of the book, Early Genesis, The Revealed Cosmology. I believe there's a link to it in the comments on this video below or in the description. What I'd like to talk about today is I'd like to compare the model of early Genesis, what I have, which I call the Christ-centered model of early Genesis, because that's what it is. The idea that I have is Genesis is only understandable if you look at it through the lens of Christ, and that it's all pointing to Christ. If you look at it through some other lens, you're not getting the real message. And then I want to kind of compare and contrast the model I'm putting forth there with a model of an outfit called Reasons to Believe. And I'm calling mine the Christ-centered model versus the Reasons to Believe model, but I'm not implying by that that the people at Reasons to Believe are not Christians. I really believe they are Christians. They sustained me for many years until I was shown this model that really describes better what the scriptures are pointing to. And honestly, if they have a testable model for creation. If they would take the assumptions that I have in my book and put it into their model, they'd pretty much be bulletproof. Okay, so, and maybe someday they will, in which case I think their witness will be that much stronger. But it's already strong. They've done a lot of good things, wonderful work. It's just that I call this the Christ-centered model because that's what it is. And so they have a model, and that's the Reasons to Believe model. So please don't think I'm implying anything derogatory by the way I phrase this. The Reasons to Believe model versus the Christ-centered model of early Genesis. Now, in some ways, our models are alike. So I'd like to start with a couple of those before I highlight the differences. We're both old Earth. That is, both of us think early Genesis is describing an earth that has been here for a long time, not just created 6,000 years ago. We both think that the word Yom in Genesis chapter 1 does not refer solely to a 24-hour day. Okay, so we're alike in that. We think the earth is old. We think the creation and the universe are old in human terms. And also, at point 2, we are both creationists. So in that sense, we're both old earth creationists, which is to say, God didn't just set things up and then set up the dominoes and hit that first domino and then everything fell into place where all life would just evolve without any further input from Him. Both of us believe that He intervened many times after the creation. He intervened in creating the human beings, in creating animal life, several occasions, on multiple occasions, or we should say, we don't know how many, but thousands or even millions of occasions. We don't know, but a lot. Now, a little caveat to that, there's a part of my model that it ultimately comes down on the creationist side too, but the idea is there was the realm above where it looked a lot more like theistic evolution, because there God speaks and His word becomes so. It was so. It becomes so quickly, and it becomes so effortlessly and perfectly, because that's the way it works in heaven above. That's why Jesus told us to pray, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." He wants it to be done like that. How's it done down here? Well, it's done haphazardly, slowly, imperfectly, and frankly, it's not done at all without His further intervention. That's how it is in our lives. We can't do God's will without His further intervention, and neither can this universe. This universe was created as a place meant to contain beings like us, and that's the way we are, so that's the way He is, or it is. Therefore, God did have to intervene many times after the initial creation to get creation to do something suitable. And that's what that word, when it says He saw that it was good, that word good actually means suitable there. So, but basically what I'm saying is this world was doing a bad copy of theistic evolution. It just couldn't pull it off. So it might look a little like theistic evolution if you look at certain things, but if you look closely enough, you can see God's fingerprints all over it. So that's how our models are alike. How are our models different? Well, in their model, Adam is the first man. And so that constrains them and say, okay, all the human race started with from two people. And then all the genetic differences we see, they're all from two people, and just Adam and Eve. And what we read in the scriptures about Adam, about his very near descendants, sons and grandsons, being having agriculture and pastoral shepherding and metallurgy and music, all that happened way back whenever the human race first showed up. I mean, we see cultural artifacts from like 40 or 50,000 years ago. So, but we don't see domestication of plants, true domestication of plants. We don't see domestication of animals, and we don't see real agriculture. We don't see metallurgy until much more recently. But his model has Adam as the first man, and all human beings are physical descendants of Adam and Eve. My model doesn't have that. Please see the video. The Bible does not teach that Adam was the sole father of the human race. Instead, my model says that there was a human race created. That was where we started. Where God wanted us to get us to was Christ and the church. And in between those two, his bridge, his way to connect those two and get one to become the other, started with Adam. Adam's role is to introduce the line of Messiah and also to bring civilization to man through the use of some of these things that Adam was an agriculturalist. He had the specially created animals there that were amenable to domestication. If he came, I've got him about 13,400 years ago as I read the genealogies. So it makes more sense for his near descendants to be fiddling with metallurgy than it does for the reasons to believe version of Adam, who must have been, what, 50,000 years ago? 100,000 years ago? So, in this sense, mankind could have been around a long time, kind of stuck in a hunter-gatherer phase, and then boom, Adam comes along and helps get them moving towards civilization, and also is the line leading to Christ. And again, it's Christ-centered. The creation of Adam was about producing Christ. Mankind was already here. It wasn't about producing mankind. Okay? So that's one way we're different. Another way is when you look at the genealogies. There are genealogies in Genesis, and they appear to be interested in tracking time. But because they only show a certain number of years back, if you read them like Bishop Ussher read them, Adam was created maybe around 6,000 BC. And so, Reasons to Believe says, there must be gaps in those genealogies. Now, I read the genealogies a little bit differently than they do, and I have another video on that. But there's no time gaps in the genealogies in this model. The model that we have, the Christ-centered model, they are accurate portrayals of time. So, but the time they show is further back than what Bishop Ussher did, but it's not crazy far back. It's not so far back that it's in the beginning of when we find some of these things in the archaeological record. So they've got to insert just a huge amount of gaps in these genealogies to make their model work. They shouldn't, if they would just switch to this model, which is what the Bible teaches anyway, they wouldn't have to do that. There's no need for gaps in the genealogies. They're accurate for what they're trying to say, but they're not trying to record the time since man began. It's the time since Adam began, and the line to Christ began. And then there's another way which is somewhat different. The flood of Noah. Now, and I have a couple of videos on that. I know in an English reading of the text, it looks like a global flood with global consequences. It's really a local flood with global consequences. The way the Reasons to Believe folks handle that is they say, well, the flood was local, but all of humanity was in one spot where the flood occurred. The animals were not all animals. They were just a special group of animals that humans had domesticated. Okay? Well, again, you're running, you run into a problem with the gaps in the genealogies and how long ago the flood was, because humans have been spread over wide areas of the globe for a long, long time. So they're running into problems with their models. My model doesn't have those problems. I agree with the Reasons to Believe. In the Christ-centered view of the flood, the animals are not all the animals in the world, and I show the text demonstrates that. The text doesn't say that Noah had all the animals in the world on the ark, of every kind of animal. It looks like that when you read the English, but when you go back and look at the Hebrew, God is not claiming that. So, and I urge you to look at that video. So, but what I'm saying is, not only was it local with the animals, or not only was it a subset of the animals, it was a subset of the humans. It's not the story of all of humanity getting wiped out. It's the story of the line of Adam getting purified. The line leading to Messiah is getting wiped out, except for those in the covenant, pointing to the covenant that is to come, and setting up the ordinance of, or the sacrament of baptism. Okay, so these are the differences in our model. Personally, they're very interested in giving reasons, as in rational reasons, why what the Bible says makes sense in the light of what nature says and what the scientific, what our findings are saying. And that's what they're interested in, and I'm interested in it too, because I believe that the universe and Scripture have the same creator, the same inspiration behind the one as behind the other. So if they're interested in that, they should investigate this model, this Christ-centered model. It's so much easier to defend on a testable view of things. It fits so much better with what we already know and what we're already being told about nature from finds in archaeology, genetics, paleontology, what have you. At any rate, that's the main differences in the model. Whichever one you choose Christ. That's what I have to ask you. That's what I'm asking you to do tonight. Thank you for listening, and may God bless you.